Yesterday, Donald J. Trump pleaded not guilty to the 37 federal charges levied against him by a corrupt, weaponized, and rotting injustice system.
When I'm reelected, and we will get reelected, we have no choice. We're not going to have a country anymore. I will totally obliterate the deep state. We will obliterate the deep state. And we know who they are. I know exactly who they are. They want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom. It's very simple. They want to silence me because I will never let them silence you. They want you silent. And I am the only one that can save this nation because you know they're not coming after me, they're coming after you, and I just happen to be standing in their way, and I will never be moving. On November 5th, 2024, justice will be done. We will take back our country and we will make America great again.
And while all eyes are on Donald J. Trump, Joe Brandon is over there yucking it up with trans influencers on the White House lawn. Oh, and meanwhile, still getting away with what really appears to be a massive multi-million-dollar pay-to-play scheme designed to enrich his entire crime family syndicate. On Monday, Senator Grassley pulled the pin on a Brandon-sized grenade in the explosion. Well, it should shock and concern every American that gives two craps about our national security.
That the foreign national who allegedly bribed Joe and Hunter Biden allegedly has audio recordings of his conversation with them. 17 such recordings. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 15 audio recordings of phone calls between him and Hunter Biden. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 2 audio recordings of phone calls between him and then Vice President Joe Biden. These recordings were allegedly kept as a sort of insurance policy for the foreign national.
So let me get this straight. So far, we have a money trail with millions going into shell accounts and then at least 9 Biden family members, including a grandchild. Then we got word about the informant file detailing this pay-to-play scheme involving Joe himself. And now we have it on good authority that 17 recordings exist. What the hell else are we waiting for here? At this point, I think Joe could flat out admit it and still nothing would change. What's it going to take, honestly? But meanwhile, the dog, pony, and Trump show commences, and that sucks all the air out of the room. It's good for Democrats, it's good for Joe, and it's good for Trump's GOP poll numbers, but what about the rest of us? Joining me now with his take on it all is Town Hall writer Scott Moorefield. Scott, it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Tommy. Great to be here.
So, Scott, I follow you on Twitter, and I can't quite figure out if you are anti-Trump or just anti-having Trump be our nominee, or where exactly you fall on this. So I want to clear that up before we get into all of it, because I want to know what your mindset is walking into all of this.
Right. So I'm not anti-Trump at all. I supported him in 2016 and 2020. Just feel like now, and the biggest reason I supported him in 2016 was because I felt like he could not win. I mean, he could win in 2016. So he did. He broke the Rust Belt, and it was a huge historic win. And he had some momentum in 2020. If it wasn't for COVID, I think he would have won easily. Yes, there was fraud. At the end of the day, he lost. And he's done nothing since then to expand his constituency. So right now, those of us who really are supporting DeSantis are doing so. Obviously, DeSantis is a great candidate. He's gotten a lot done for conservatives, real victories, expanding the voter base in Florida, won by a tiny margin in 2018. And then in 4 years later, 60% of the vote. So DeSantis is really Trump on steroids. He's not Trump light. He's somebody who could go through with Trump's policies and actually win and get them done. So that's where I stand. It's not from a Lincoln Project, never Trump standpoint. It's just, hey, we need a winner and we've got to have a change. So that's where I'm at with that.
Right, I don't disagree with you on any of the points that you just made, and your concerns are my concerns. It's difficult right now, though, because the second that you say anything that even somewhat sounds like disloyalty to Donald Trump, people think that you are anti-Trump or that you don't appreciate what Trump has done or that you don't like his policies, and that couldn't be further from the truth, at least for myself. So I want to talk about this Trump indictment, all right? I'm going to be honest. I think a lot of people are not honest about this. I have Trump fatigue, and it's not his fault. It clearly is not his fault. The man is just one after the other. They're going after him. They're weaponizing the system, every system against the man. They have for the last 7+ years. It's exhausting. I can't imagine how exhausting it is for the Trump team and for Donald Trump himself. But honestly, looking at it like I have Trump fatigue. Every time they go after him, and then we have this big charade, and then it covers days worth of news, if not weeks worth of news. And I'm just quite frankly getting tired of it. But I'm wondering, will this indictment have the same effect on his poll numbers within the GOP as the last one did? Is this going to be the bump that gets him to be our nominee, no questions asked?
No, and that's the crazy thing about this. And I tweeted it yesterday. There really 4 things can be true at the same time, right? We know the DOJ is weaponized against conservatives. That's obvious. We know that they have gone after Trump unjustly several times. Russiagate, the phone call, Ukraine, even the New York indictment, all is BS, right? None of that is real. It's all nonsense. So everybody just assumes that Trump can do no wrong because they've gone after him so unjustly in the past. So that's true. The third thing is we know that obviously Biden and eventually I think there's something we can discuss that later, but I think something's going to happen with that. But right now, it appears that Hunter Biden, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden get away with everything, basically the same thing Trump's accused of. But when you really dig in, it's also true that Trump has been his own worst enemy in this situation. At first, when they raided Mar-a-Lago, I was with everybody else and saying, oh, this is complete nonsense. But when you read the indictment, there's some real things. And when you have somebody like, and I understand Bill Barr is a complete worthless, incompetent right now. Okay. But the guy's a serious guy. And when he's on there saying, look, there's serious things on this indictment that Trump could have prevented easily. This is stuff. And when we weigh whether something's just, I think the biggest thing is, would an ordinary person do this? Right. And if we see ourselves like, man, we could easily fall into that, then we say that's unjust. But with Trump, in this situation, no ordinary person would do a lot of the things that are in this indictment, if even half of it is true. No ordinary person is going to try to hide things or be quoted saying the things that he has been, or be recorded saying the things that he supposedly recorded saying. So yesterday he said, oh, this is just personal stuff. This is just my, I don't know, my pictures, right? Just personal pictures. No, it's a lot more than that. If it was just pictures, I don't think they would have done that. I think they've learned enough about in the past to not come at him with some serious stuff. So this is serious. He's going to get, he's very likely to get convicted. I'm not a lawyer, but it doesn't look good. And so even regardless, even if he's not convicted, why are we going to nominate somebody who's fighting 4 felony charges right now? Why would we nominate somebody like that? It takes a toll. So yeah, it's helping him with really his core base, but it's not helping him with anybody else. And that's the problem. You've got to win Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. If you don't win those 3 states, every Republican loses. So what's the Trump people's plan to win those states? There's not a plan. It's just, oh, election fraud. Oh, my guy's being persecuted. Oh, we're going to show the deep state. And that's it. And there's no plan. And it's complete nonsense. And it's time to move on.
So I don't disagree with a lot of what you said. I mean, when you read the indictment, could Trump have prevented a lot of this? Yeah, I think so. But also when you look at the magnitude of what others have done and then what Donald Trump had done, when you've got Hillary Clinton and Benghazi emails and smashing things with hammers and deleting 37,000 emails after a subpoena. I mean, there's a lot of things here. And then you look at Donald Trump having these documents at Mar-a-Lago. It really doesn't feel like it's the same. It doesn't feel like it's the weight of let's put this man in jail for the rest of his natural life. I mean, that doesn't seem to me realistic unless you're just trying to go after Donald Trump. But I understand what you're saying. It's going to be very hard to convince independents and even some Republicans that are tired of the Trump circus that that is going to be the guy, and that is going to be the uphill battle. And I worry about it. But no, go ahead.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, yes, eventually what Biden did and what Hunter Biden, all this stuff, Hillary, the bleach, all that stuff, that's way worse. It's way worse. And I acknowledge that. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, his biggest argument could be that, hey, selective prosecution, right? And that's what he's going to try to say. And that's what his lawyers are going to argue. And I agree with that. There is selective prosecution. If I were the DOJ, I would not have brought this forth. I mean, in this way, even though, yes, he's been his own worst enemy, but he has a point there. He does. And I do think that a Ron DeSantis, should he get elected, would have very much the moral authority to pardon Trump if he gets elected.
So I want to bring that up with you. Let's have that discussion, because I was planning on discussing that with you. We know yesterday Vivek said that he calls on all of his Republican contenders to agree to pardon Donald Trump if they should be the nominee and then the president. And he's calling on everybody to kind of come together in some kind of a loyalty pact. And I'm wondering what you think about that. Do you think strategically that that is wise for these other Republicans to come out and commit themselves to Donald Trump? We don't expect it from a Mike Pence or a Chris Christie or a Nikki Haley. But when you look at Scott, when you look at DeSantis, do you think that they are wise at this point to say, yeah, we will pardon Trump if we become president?
Yeah, that's a really tough call. I think it probably is politically wise to at least say that you'll consider that. Obviously, you've got to wait for the judicial process to work itself out and make sure there's not something, blatantly worse maybe or whatever. But you could maybe, based on selective prosecution, you could consider that. But if you don't do it, then you're going to be put in the same camp as the Mike Pences of the world. And that's not where you want to be, right? So, but if you do it, to commit yourself to that, that's a tough question, Tomi. I think maybe he should, but I could understand him being very vague about it. Hey, we'll consider it. I felt like DeSantis' statement was pretty strong. Mm-hmm. The DOJ has been weaponized. And we've got to pull that back. So DeSantis has a plan to pull that back. He's got details, and the guy can get things done. He's a fantastic executor. And so if he were in office, I have no doubt that he could do and accomplish so many of the things that Trump failed to accomplish when he was in power. And so, yeah, you got to get Trump's base, though, if you're going to get that. You've got to win the nomination. And I think maybe you do have to do that. Maybe you do have to promise to pardon him.
Yeah, that's why this is going to be so tricky. This entire primary season is going to be tricky because the other Republicans, and when I say the other Republicans, the only one that matters is Ron DeSantis, they're going to have to make sure that they ingratiate themselves into the mega base, the conservative base that has followed Donald Trump and loves Donald Trump. But they also have to keep in mind, if they were to be the nominee, they have to look forward to a general election and also be able to still bring in the people that hate Trump, always hated Trump, always going to hate Trump. It's going to be a really weird spot. Last thing I want to ask you is something that I've noticed in the last several weeks, if not several months, if not several years at this point. And I want to get your take on it before we wrap. Gavin Newsom was on with our friend Sean Hannity the other night in an interview that we could talk about probably for an hour. But there's one thing that I've been noticing is that Gavin Newsom is not going after Donald Trump. In fact, he almost refuses to go after Donald Trump, even when he's baited to go after Donald Trump. In fact, he almost compliments Donald Trump, especially with his handling of COVID. I'm wondering what you think, because I know this guy is strategic as hell. What do you think the strategy is behind that for somebody that's a governor of a very, very blue, very anti-Trump state?
Yeah, I think Gavin Newsom has his eyes on the prize, and he knows. I think everything is careful. I've got to give him credit for appearing with Hannity. That was pretty impressive. Most leftists won't do that, anything even remotely like that. So he comes across as polished, articulate, likable. And I think the reason that he may be not coming after Trump as hard is because Democrats know they lost some of their base to Trump. And so if he runs, if they end up dumping Biden, which wouldn't be the worst strategic move, honestly, they could run an eggplant and beat Trump, right? But it doesn't matter. So Biden's going to beat Trump from his basement again. That doesn't matter. But if DeSantis gets, or Scott or somebody like that gets the nomination, then I think they're going to go with plan B, which is let's get rid of Biden or have him at least agree not to run, right? And then bring in Gavin Newsom, because he's honestly their best candidate. And Gavin Newsom doesn't want to make the Trump base mad. He wants to have, I think at least initially, he wants to have big tents. So that may be why he's doing it. It's possible. And it's also possible that he wants Trump to get the nomination. Every Democrat wants Trump to get the nomination. If you know anything about politics and you're a Democrat, you want to run against Trump. You don't want to run against, the only person you might not want to run against less than Trump is maybe like Mike Pence. Okay. But other than that, you want to run against Trump if you're a Democrat. So it could be some of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what it is. I think he sees Ron DeSantis as a much bigger threat in a general election. So I'm going to talk about it later in my final thoughts, but the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so I think that Trump and Gavin Newsom kind of have somewhat of an unspoken pact here that they're both going to go after Ron DeSantis because they both want to neutralize that threat. It's going to be a wild couple of weeks. I have fatigue from it all, and we haven't even gotten started yet. But I'm hoping that we can at some point get back to the issues, because there's a lot of Americans out there that are so upset at what's happening to Donald Trump, but they're even more upset at what's happening at their kitchen table. And, having trans influencers flashing people on the White House lawn. That's also a discussion for another time. Scott, thanks for all your time, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Tomi. Appreciate it.